graduated and then came back. I didn't plan on doing that, but that's what happened. I get married in 1979, and my wife and I moved then to Kiryat Arba in 1981 because we were interested in doing something someplace we felt we could contribute. I started working in Hebron about over 20 years ago, and we moved down here 16 years ago. We moved down here specifically because I've been working here. I had an illusion that if we lived here, I'd see more of my family than if I stayed up in Kiryat Arba as well. But you know, I dropped my wife, she agreed, and we came down here. Oh, but we've never regretted it. We've been here for a long time.
So you came here for work, not for a major Zionist cause, or?
Well, no, the work is part of that.
Okay.
I work as a spokesperson for the Jewish community of Hebron. So I represent the community. I do a lot of writing, tours, speaking to groups, photography, stills video. It's all very ideological. And being here is part of that. Where did I grow up?
Yeah.
China. No, I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey. I lived there. I spent most of my childhood, high school in New Jersey. And then I went to school in Cleveland, Ohio, and came over on a one-year program, planning on going back, finishing, going to law school, and you know, everything that normal people do. And then I flipped out and I came back here.
You think things are getting better here?
They're getting better. That's an interesting question. Depends on what level you're looking at. Personal level, national level, international level. For me, it's great. Nationally speaking, in terms of the state of Israel, there are still, and it's very difficult to narrow it just to Hebron, because I think the issues today are not local issues here. Sometimes they express themselves here, but the issues that we face today here, we face throughout the state of Israel in different places. And there are certainly a lot of problems today. Anybody who sees what's been going on in Jerusalem for the past few months, who knows about the kidnapping last summer, or the war in Gaza this summer, the problems that we're having up north today, being basically sitting on the border of another country that's involved in the war, and every once in a while some of their missiles come over the border and go on and hit us. You've got issues just about every place today. That doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's just because you've got problems that it's not getting better. There are a lot of aspects of state of Israel where there's tremendous progress over time. But there are also a lot of problems. And how exactly they will be resolved and how long it will take, I have problems to do.
Do you, or like any of the rest of the Jewish community, have like any kind of relations to the rest of Hebron, like to the other side in any way? Like
Okay. So in order to answer that question, let me start back a little bit. After we came back to Hebron, and people started to come here in the late 60s, and Kiryat Arba was founded in 1971, people started to come back to live here in Hebron, 1979, 1980, and during that period of time, following that, there were a lot of connections between the Jews and the Arabs here. There were personal relationships and business relationships. We used to go shopping here. People knew people and sit down and have coffee together. I won't say that the relationships were, brotherly love, but people got along. That started to change drastically during the first Intifada, the end of the 1980s, coming into the 1990s. People are unaware of it, but during that period of time, there were over 1,000 Arabs that were murdered by other Arabs because they were suspected of collaborating with the State of Israel, not just in Hebron, many places. And as a result of that, many of those relationships stopped, because any Arab with any sense stopped any kind of public relationship with Jews because he was afraid they were suspected and they might kill him. That led into the Oslo Accords in the 1990s after Yitzhak Rabin was elected prime minister. And here in Hebron specifically, that led into the Hebron Accords, which were signed and implemented in January of 1997, and the city was split. And most of the city at that point was transferred to the Palestinian Authority. At that time, Yasser Arafat. At that point, much of the PA leadership, especially those in Hebron, thought that it was just a period of time until the Jewish community here evaporated for one reason or another. And that led into the Second Intifada, beginning the end of the year 2000. And at that point, our neighbors in the hills around us started shooting at us, and they shot at us until the middle end of 2002. You see my windows here have cages in them. When I moved into this apartment, they didn't. But the whole apartment was sandbagged, because otherwise it would have been impossible to live here. That basically brought about an end to almost all ties between Jews and Arabs in Hebron. And for the most part, that has not changed. There are very, very, very few relationships today. We do have a very interesting relationship with a sheikh in Hebron named Jabari. He's the head of one of the largest clans in the city. I've spoken to him on the phone, and we take groups to talk to him, answer questions. We've had meetings with him. We obviously don't agree about a lot of things, but we have very interesting discussions. And interestingly enough, last week I had a visitor from the States who I took up to some of the areas in Tel Almeida, and we met an Arab neighbor of mine who walked over to us and we shook hands and started talking like long-lost old friends. It was very interesting. But that's the exception to the rule. Today there's very little relationship between the Jewish community here and the other communities, which I personally think is unfortunate. I don't see it changing drastically in the future.
Tel Aviv. That was you.
That's right, yeah, it was
Do
me.
you want to say to him? I just interested what you think.
Yeah, it was, I talked in Tel Aviv to a lot of Israeli young people, and they said, what, you're going to Jerusalem? I've never been there, I never want to go there.
To Jerusalem?
In Tel Aviv,
Yeah.
young people, and they said, I don't want to join the army, I don't want to fight for all these settlers, I just want to be in Tel Aviv, on the beach, I don't care about politics. So. And my impression is that Israel is somewhat divided between very secular Jews, or not even real Jews in Tel Aviv, and Orthodox Jews who think of Eretz Israel.
So that's interesting. Certainly there are many different political ideas. Truth is, that's where I feel about Tel Aviv. No, not really. But look, first of all, there are very, very there are divisions in the Israeli population. I think from polls that I've seen, that extremity, it's a very, very, very extreme, okay? If somebody says that they haven't come to Hebron, so I've heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
If somebody says, I don't want to go to Jerusalem, and I've never been there, it lights up a red light.
It was just one.
Okay. I'm happy to hear that. Because Jerusalem is the capital of the country, and it's a very, very, very important place. And there's a lot of schools, take kids class trips, and you don't have to live there. I don't live there, but, in terms of statistically, that kind of expression that you heard, I think, is a very small minority of people, including the idea of going to the army. Most men go into the army. There are those that don't.
I think
Most
everybody
men-
has to, or
Well, people have to, but you know that have to doesn't necessarily mean that people do it. There are a lot of things we have to do that we don't do. Most men, according to the law and like that, most men do go in. There are a lot of women that also go into the army. A lot of people go into the army on both sides of the political spectrum, not necessarily agreeing with what they're told to do, whether it be the right or the left. The idea of people saying, well, we're going to have to go into the army to fight for the settlers as such. This last summer, the rockets were being shot from Gaza, where we haven't been for almost 10 years now, into Sderot, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and Tel Aviv, and reaching almost as high as north as Haifa. If they want to kill those, the people who live in Haifa settlers, that's fine. There are Arabs that call all of Israeli settlers. Doesn't make any difference where we live. But I think that that's a very, very, very small group of people who think to that extreme. There are certainly differences of opinion. Not all people on the right are religious. You have parties today in the Knesset. I guess probably the best example is Lieberman's party, which is not a religious party, but they're fairly right-wing. Victor Lieberman, who's the foreign minister today. And I think that a lot of Israelis, at least on such issues as military service, which isn't just mandatory today, it's necessary. You have to have a standing army because you're surrounded by people that want to wipe you out. And if you don't have a standing military force, then you have no way to defend yourself. And most people understand that. And they, in many, many cases, leave their ideology, left, right, aside, and they go into the army and do what they have to do. There are people who don't, but that's like that, anywhere in the world. I don't think it's representative in any way, shape, or form for either side.
And what is your vision for the state of Israel? Do you believe in the two-state solution, or?
So that's two things. That's two different questions. Let's start with the first question. What do I see for the future? And then we'll go into the second one. Look, I think that on a very, very general answer to your question about a vision, I think I would answer the same thing as to whether you asked me what's my vision in Hebron. Okay? And that is to be able to live normally without having to deal with some of the issues we have to deal with today. I'm not interested in dealing with terrorism, be it in Hebron or be it in Jerusalem. Last week, a 3-month-old baby was killed by a terrorist. And there were some people who were critically injured. I'm not interested in rockets. I would be very happy if my children didn't have to go into the army. And I would be just as happy if my grandchildren, or today children, when they are 18, 19 years old, they don't have to go into the army. I think it's important ideologically for a person to be willing to sacrifice for the state, but I prefer a situation where you don't need it. Because you know that when you have people in the military and there is a conflict, there's a war, there are some people that don't come back. I prefer that not happen. Do I see that happen in the near future? No, I don't. I think that there are a lot of changes today in what's going on in the world, and I don't see the problems that we're starting to face changing quickly. Whether we take a look at what's going on in Syria, what's going on with the Islamic State, ISIS, what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in Iraq. It's very difficult today to turn on Facebook because I see an awful lot of pictures that I don't want to look at. I'm not interested in seeing people's heads. I don't think they should have people have their heads cut off because they're Christians, because they don't believe what somebody else believes. But that affects us here too. very much. And I don't see that changing very quickly.